All right, I'm Anthony, and once again, I am going over, well, I guess it would have been helpful had I lined that up correctly. So I'm going over the Python project. And again, I had to make some minor alterations. I made a 4x4 square and saw 4x4 on the requirements. No, I needed 4 more of those. So we're going to do again, quick overview. I'm going to talk a little bit faster this time. So we're going to go over the pattern overview, the helper functions, and then the main function, and then how I handled alternating color, not just within the pattern itself, but also then for every 4th square, I changed colors. So here's my pattern. Ta-da. Just take note of the basic patterns, basically squares and triangles. All right, so helper functions, I've broken them down into 5 categories. The first one being positioning, shapes, column makers, square maker, line maker. I guess those are my 5 categories. Now let's talk about functioning. I've got a couple of them. I've got the start project. That is called by the main function. It basically just puts it up in the upper right-hand corner, upper left-hand corner. I've got the column resets. I did columns instead of rows. And so this basically moves it up to start with the next column. I've got the new square. This basically sets it up to start a new square. And this is the square that's a 6x6 of the smaller squares of SV size. And then the line of square resets. Basically, once I've got the 4 square, I've got a line of the Once I have 4 6x6 squares in a line, this line resets it so that we can set up the next line underneath that. Start a new line. Now starting a new 4x4 square. Once I have a 4x4 of the 6x6 squares, this one will set it up so we can start that next square on the row. And now I have start new losos, which is line of squares. Basically, where the start new 4x4 square sets it up so big I can draw a line of 6x6 squares. Excuse me, a 4x. You know what I mean. And this basically returns it to a starting position so we can do another line of the larger squares. So start project, it's just a helper function. Again, we basically start by picking the pen up, moving backwards by 370, turning left at a right angle of 90, and moving forward by 290, and then turning right by 90, and that's dropping the pen. That way, when we start the rest of the drawing, basically we can just start away. The column reset is another positioning. Basically, it resets the turtle between columns. Now, the turtle at the end of a column should end in the lower right, although depending on what square ended there and what the next column set up, depended on if I needed to position the turtle before calling this function. So here I pick the pen up, turn left, move forward by size, and then left by 90, and then forward by 6. Well, size times 6. And then right by 90. And then drop the pen so we can start drawing again. Start a new square. It takes the turtle in size, as we can see there. This basically sets up this turtle to draw a new square of 6x6. Start by turning left by 90, forward by size, turn left by 90 degrees, and that's it. Oh, no, it's not. I just misclicked, apparently. So the forward by size times 5. Now, the reason that we start by size times 5 is because the first square on every 6x6 function, if I were to go size times 6, it would start 1 square higher than it needed to be. right by 90, and that was it. So let's go into the line of square reset. This basically starts a new row of a line of squares. Okay, I didn't realize it was going to count the same part as a completely different paragraph, but okay. So basically start a new line of squares, and the helper function to this is basically a helper function to square of squares. You start by turning right by 90, forward by size times 23, and then left by 90, forward by size, and then turning left so that we can restart, I believe. Now, I want to call out this size times 23. The reason that we are not doing 24 is because the last square it ends on, it ends at the lower left-hand side. So I only need to move over 23 squares to get to the starting point. Yep. All right, next function. Start new 4x4 square. This is a new function. This was not in the last video. All right, here it basically sets up the turtle to start drawing a new 4x4. Now this 4x4 I'm referring to is a single square of 6 smaller squares by 6 smaller squares. All right, so we want to draw left by 90, forward by size, left, turning left again by 90 degrees, forward by 23, and then right by 90. Rather straightforward function. This is the last positioning function here, also not on the last video. Start new line of squares. It takes t and size. It basically resets the turtle for a new line of squares. Forward by size, left by 90, and then it goes just backwards by size times 95. Again, the reason that we're not doing 96 is because of how it ends in that lower left and column, the lower left-hand side of the column, and that last column. All right, so helper functions, shapes. There are 2 basic shapes in this pattern, square and the right triangle. However, I have 4 functions to draw shapes. This is because I have one that draws the square, the triangle, but I have two functions that draw squares from the triangle. Now, as you can see here from this, I have 2 squares here, but 4 triangles. I have it as a function that draws this triangle here on the left, and I have one that draws the one on the right. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at some of this. So draw square. It takes the turtle, the size, and a color. The draw triangle. This is a special one and a very long function just because it takes the just because of how I set it up. So I have the turtle, the size, and this has a special one of try. This basically signifies what kind of right triangle we're drawing, since there are 4 possible in the square. So drawing the line of triangle 1 takes the turtle, the size, color 1, and color 2, and then draw a square of try 2. Now, yep, okay. So, and then I'm going to go into what the difference is between these 2 and the shapes here in a second. And now, draw a square, T size color. This basically draws a square. It's rather simple. I start by, inside of this function, I call the T color black and then have the variable here color of what was fed in. At the begin fill, for I in range of 4, forward by size, left by 90, and fill, and forward by size. Now I did the forward by size here at the very end because it sets me up for the next one after the first column. Just because of how the triangle, that the first square of the column, of column number 1, sets right after that I have a triangle. And if I did forward by size, it allowed me to set the triangle, it made it easier for the transition. Now draw the triangle, basically draws a right triangle, and it is a helper function. The try indicates that what corner the 90-degree corner is in. So number 1, if that is received as a parameter, means that the triangle that's drawn, it has a 90-degree in the upper left. Number 2 is in the lower right. Number 3 is in the upper right, and number 4 is in the lower left. Now, try 1 we'll call a 1 and 2, and then the draw triangle, the square of triangle 2 draws a 3 and 4, respectively. So now there is some special variables here I want to call out. It was just necessary for the math. A and B are both equal to size squared, and then C equals A plus B. And we're going to see how this works here in the function here in a moment. So if try equals 1, 1, it moves forward by, it turns right by 135 degrees, moves forward by C squared, as you meet the square root of C, and then turns right again by 135 and moves forward by C. Now, as you can see, I'm just going to click through here for number 2, kind of the same thing. This part is not actually part of the code, it's part of the slide. And I'm just clicking here through 3, you can see how I basically just set it up. And then also, just in case something happens, just for troubleshooting purposes, nothing ever actually did. I never saw that come up. I saw many other errors, but not that one. Now, this slide is old. I actually have more than 2 final helper functions that do shapes. This is where we're talking. I'm sorry, I've forgotten my own slides. This is talking about try 1 and try 2, just to see how we're setting those up. So as you can see, I immediately start out with the black and C1. These try 1 and try 2, whatever triangle's on the top gets whatever is the first parameter received. That comes in handy when we're talking about how I handled color alternating within the 6x6 square itself. And then so begin fill, draw a triangle, parameter 1, end fill, and then we do some positioning set up for the next triangle, but not before we set up the fill, and then end fill. Now, if this black mark will go away, both try 2 and try 1 have this left by 45 at the very end. If not, Q2 might have a right by 45, but that means I'm correcting from that 135-degree angle from drawing the triangle. Try 2, very similar to try 1. And see here, it was the right by 45, but basically we start the fill, call triangle 3, end the fill, set up for positioning, start the fill, call for try 4, end fill, and then position so we can move on to the next square shape, whatever that may be. Now, the column makers, I've got 6 of these suckers because there are 6 columns, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Notice, however, 4, 5, and 6 are just mirror images of 3, 2, and 1, respectively. Column 1. Now, also, I just want you to know I only have this doc string here and these 2 variables for this particular slide. It's in all of the functions, but just to save room on the slides themselves. So I'm going to click through the code, but let's watch here as I'll read off them. Read off the section as we start talking. I'll use positioning just for anything that is not calling the actual color. All right, so now here we draw the square. Column 1, it always starts here on the side. Remember, I was talking about that earlier. And then we position, we call square of try 1 to draw the next square. We do some more positioning. We call try 1 again because you see here the angle of the triangle. The triangles are the same, but the colors have inverted. We do more positioning, and then we call a try 2. We do try 2 again. Colors and the color parameters are inverted. And then after that, we turn left. And then at the end of the function here, more positioning, and then we just draw the last circle on column 1. Column 2, again, notice I don't have the doc string or the variables. They will no longer be in the slides, but they are in the functions of the program. Here we immediately just start calling by try 1, and then we draw a square, no positioning needed. Then we have to position here for try 1 again for that 4th excuse me, for that third square, position for the fourth square, which is a try 2, and then we do some additional positioning and then set up for square. Then we move on and set up for the last square, which is the try 2, square of try 2. And then we set up for the next function. That's that way, so my reset would work accordingly. Column 3, I'm just going to start. It starts off the try 1, as we can see here, and then try 2. Notice the color parameters have switched. And then here, this was the easiest function to draw. Just simply no transitioning between the second try 1 and then the square and then square. We do some positioning here after the second square to set up for try 2. We more positioning, and then we go into another try 2. Column 4, we start immediately by drawing a square of try 2, square of try 2 again after some positioning. We position ourselves again to set up for square, and then no positioning necessary. We can just draw another square. We do position again though for square of try 1. This is this last one right here, or second to last one. And then the bottom function itself is another try 1, but we do some positioning just to make sure that our reset functions accordingly. Now number 5, we start immediately by drawing triangle square of triangle 2. Then we position ourselves for that square. We position ourselves again for another triangle 2. Then some positioning, and there was some odd behavior here where I need to just set up for the square of triangle 1, and then drawing the square, some positioning, and then the last try 1. Last column function, we had to do some functioning here just with how the reset was and the fact that we've got a square here at the top. And the function originally, the reset looking at originally to this upper right hand corner. So actually, no, I can't remember, but it was something funky like that. But we immediately just move into drawing the square after some positioning with how that was taken care of. There was no transition and no positioning necessary for square of try 2. We did have to position, just turn for another square of try 2. Some positioning for try 1, some positioning for the other try 1, and then we drew the square. No positioning necessary. Now helper functions here. I draw a square from columns. I called all of those columns I just quickly rattled off at you in one successive function, just all of them right after each other. Right, okay. Now we're in line of squares. This is where we are doing the squares of 6 by 6. We are doing a line of those. This draws, takes the turtle, the sides, color 1 and color 2. Now in for I in range of 4, if I is less than 3, we call the draw square of columns. That was the last slide we talked about, with very easy to do, and then the resets. On the fourth iteration, we don't call the reset for the square. The square because we're at the end of the line, and then that means that we'd have to call the square of, the reset that's in this one. Now the square of squares, let me just take a quick look at what's going on here. I don't believe this function still has the start project. I've moved that. But however, we have for I in range of 4. If I is less than 3, we draw the line of squares and then have the line of square reset called here. And then if it's at number 3 of the iteration of the for loop, we just draw the line, and I have something else to take care of that. Now the helper function, line of squares, here, this is actually truncated. This is actually where I handled color alternating for the multiple squares throughout the thing. So I'm only showing right here is the for loop where I called everything and moved everything around. We will talk about the color implementing portion of this function later on when I go into how color alternating was happening or how I handled that. But however, it was in a for loop. If I is less than 3, the square of squares is called. Start new 4x4 square reset. Right here, that function was positioning. And then else we call the square of squares. Now here is the main function where it's the square of squares. Now this basically handles everything. This is where the start project function positioning function is supposed to be. For I in range of 4, if I is less than 3, we have the line of squares with the positioning function followed up after that, which is the start new line of squares. Else, which is the third iteration, we just do the line of squares, and that would be it. Now alternating colors, and now here as we can see here, just following column 1, it wasn't necessarily easy to change over. I've got a blue, orange, or red. I did go through a couple iterations. And remember, for my square of triangles, whatever triangle was on top got filled first. Sorry about that. So where were we? In regards to fifth, we are on this fourth square here, where we're going, now we're on this square, where we do the red, blue, and then blue again. Or actually, I was slightly off. But I couldn't necessarily follow that pattern specifically on any of the columns. I could have set it up to where I was doing 1, 2, and 3, and then just basically mirroring 3, 2, and 1 by 4, 5, and 6 respectively. Now, in regards to alternating colors, let's just pull out this function here. This was the draw square of, I can't remember. This is one of the columns, I believe. Now, when we look here at the square of triangle 2, I have turtle size color 1, color 2, and then I switched the parameters down here at the next one for color 2 and color 1. I did the same thing for the triangles, color 1, color 2, and then color 2, color 1. However, when we get into the bigger structure of it, I had to find creative ways in the previous, in regards to alternating colors for the big squares themselves, not just when I was building them, or the columns, as it were. So in the line of squares is where I handled everything for color alternating. Now, coming through here, I set up a for I in range of 4. And also, I just want to quickly call out here, as part of the parameters of line of squares is a num. That is actually being fed in by the main function. And that is actually the I in that for loop for the main function as it gets fed through. I have if this I here, though, if I modulus 2 is not equal to 0, but num equals the value of 0, it goes by these color patterns. And then the else if is if it does, I modulus 2 does equal 2, and then num equals 1. This is the color pattern. And then I have, basically it just goes on, I modulus 2 not equal to 0, but num equals the value of 2. This is the color pattern. And then another else if I modulus 2 equals 0 and num equals 3, this is the color pattern. Else, we just do this color pattern here. And then inside of this, it was just the if I is less than 3 pattern. That way the start the new 4x4 squares that was reset, but not called on the fourth iteration of that particular for loop, of this particular for loop. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at the pattern itself. Now, this is the final product. Let's go ahead and run it just in case. Just for funsies, it's or two. It would help if I actually hit F5. It helps if I'm actually on. I did this earlier too. This is what happens when the sleep schedules get mixed up. Give it some moments here. All right, and it drew it again successfully. And that is it. Thank you so much.